Hello, everybody. This is StorrsNation, and I'm your host, Richard Prosser. Today, we have a great show in store talking about moves in the NFL and NBA and some March Madness. Today, I have an old buddy of mine and co-host of Big East Breakdown, Josh Schlactus. Josh, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Richard. It's good to be here.
And I also am happy to introduce a second time on StorrsNation an analyst, Cole Stefan. Cole, how are you today?
It's been a busy day, but break's coming up, so I guess I could say I'm feeling pretty good.
I'm happy to hear that, Cole. And to begin, let's talk about the trade of the weekend. The Miami Dolphins traded the number 3 overall pick to the San Francisco 49ers. Miami received the 12th pick and 2 future first-round picks and a future third-round pick. Within an hour, Miami traded up to the 6th overall pick with the Eagles, trading away the 49er future first-round pick. Cole, how would you grade the Miami trade movement over the weekend?
I have no idea how I want to analyze this full. I'm going to give it a B. I'm not sure what to expect here. I don't know what the Dolphins were going to do with 3 anyway, but swapping this pick, twice, makes the Texans feel really bad because essentially it is their pick, Bill O'Brien. And the Dolphins are, in this case, this makes the Dolphins very keen on keeping Tua around. He had a decent freshman season behind the leadership of Check's notes, Ryan Fitzpatrick. But now it's like it's his team. Fitzpatrick is gone, and now it's pretty much his show, and we're all just living in it, I guess. Now, the Dolphins traded out of this pick mainly because the Niners desperately wanted to draft a quarterback at 3, or so it seems. They only have less than 2 years of Garoppolo left. But again, I'm still not sure what to make for him on Miami's end. But here's what I think they could do with it. Now that they have the 6th overall pick, they could go for a wide receiver that could help, get a wide receiver that compliments Devontae Parker, for example. They could do that or fill the offensive line. They have plenty of options. Devontae Parker, getting help for Devontae Parker and also Tua at quarterback is probably their best choice. So my best pick is they just take a wide receiver at 6. And now, again, they also have another first-round pick, so if they need to fill another hole there, they can take a big, shiny name on, defense or something with a later pick. But I totally think they could definitely go with a wide receiver at 6. It just feels incredibly weird if they just outright draft a quarterback to make Tua feel bad. 1-1 then for the world.
Yeah, so when you look at this grade, I honestly don't see how you can give the Dolphins anything other than A, simply for the fact of the matter is they traded out of a spot. They got an extra first-round pick, and they're not going to get any guy different. They're going to get the same guy they want. You look at the options that they're going to have at 6 now that San Francisco's moved up. That really leaves basically 1, 2, 3, and 4, all probably going to be quarterbacks. 5, if the Bengals are still there, is going to be Penei Sewell. So the Dolphins, who are probably going to take Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts or Devonta Smith or whoever wide receiver they like there, or maybe even Rashawn Slater, all of those guys are still there at 6. So they moved down 3 picks, got an extra first-round draft pick, an extra third-round draft pick for absolutely no change in player. Easy A for them. In terms of who I think that the 49ers are going to take at 3, I've been hearing a lot of just in general about Mac Jones. I don't know how I feel about that. Just personally, I think that Justin Fields, Trey Lance may be better options. And Mac Jones's pro day that he just had today may be a little bit tough to kind of keep your head on. He missed a couple of overthrows. It was not the best showing, but I think from what I've been hearing, it definitely looks like Mac Jones is probably going to go at 3. On the Eagles side of the pick, I think they probably get around a B. They traded down a bit. They're not going to get their top priority weapon that they want, but I think there will still be one of these 4 guys available, either Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, Kyle Pitts, or Jalen Waddle. I think it's probably going to be either Devonta Smith or Jalen Waddle, but I think they get it fine. Really the only wild card in this is, the 49ers, because they basically mortgaged their entire future on this quarterback. So their grade is still to be determined. It's how this quarterback turns out.
And with all that said, I am very excited that the New York Jets will be punching the ticket in at number 2 for BYU quarterback Zach Wilson. After watching his entire 28-minute pro day, the kid looks legit. He's a stud. He's ready for the moment. He's ready for New York. And I cannot wait for the New York Jets to win the division so I can win my wager with Josh Schlactus that the Jets will make the playoffs.
Come on. I don't even have to say anything to that. Everyone watching this knows. Come on. Zach Wilson looks good, though. I'll say that. Just next year, really.
Hey, with a stud quarterback in the division, he's probably going to be the best in year 1. That's all I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to say.
Josh Allen to got it.
And let's stick to some New York football teams. With Josh Schlactus on the show, I have to talk New York Giants. After inking Kenny Galladay to a 4-year, $72 million contract and Adoree Jackson to a 3-year, $39 million contract, how would you grade the Giants' offseason moves? And does this make them in playoff or bust mode?
Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk about the Giants offseason moves. It's big contracts when you look at the money there, $72 million over 4 years, $39 million over 3 years for Galladay and Jackson. But it could not be better for the Giants to make these moves. I give this an A++ offseason, and here's why. They're going all in on Daniel Jones right here. They're saying, Daniel Jones, you have to basically show us you're either a quarterback that we're going to have for the next 10 years or we're drafting a guy next year. It's as simple as that. And the fact of the matter is, Daniel Jones, all of his flaws considered, the one thing that he does at an elite NFL level, statistically top 5 NFL quarterback over the last 2 years in this category, is throwing the ball deep downfield in tight windows. That's the one thing that he does at an elite level, and that's the one thing that the Giants were missing, a guy like, Kenny Galladay, who can get those situations going. And the fact of the matter is with the Giants is they needed a guy who could stretch the field. Kenny Galladay does exactly that. They need a guy who can separate from the defense on big plays. John Ross does that. They had James Bradbury at their number 1 corner, but they were starting Isaac Yiadom and Julian Love at their number 2 corner. So Adoree Jackson comes in and gives them 2 cornerbacks to pair with their incredible safety trio in Jabril Peppers, Xavier McKinney, and Logan Ryan. Not to mention they add 2 guys, Danny Shelton and the Vikings defensive end, that are allowed to add pressure to the quarterback on the D line. Not to mention the fact that they added a lot more weaponry in terms of tight ends, Kyle Rudolph there. I think that the Giants did a really good job just shoring up all the holes and basically getting them to a spot where they can draft for best player available when it comes this April.
With all that said, it all rests on the shoulders of Daniel Jones being a good enough quarterback to lead the team into the playoffs. And with all this said, you can really see that the NFL is king of sports, talking about offseason moves when they're not going to put on pads for another 5 months. Moving on to the NBA. The trade deadline was last Thursday, and there wasn't as many big names that were being moved, like Kyle Lowry saying put in Toronto. Cole, who is the biggest winner of the trade deadline?
There aren't really many winners here, but I'm going to pick the Chicago Bulls. Look at them. They're right in the middle of the playoff pack in the Eastern Conference. If I'm correct, as they stand right now, they should be like in that area where they have to play a play-in because of, I guess, COVID. But one thing that's going to help them out significantly with their playoff players, they acquired Nikola Vucevic in exchange for people like Otto Porter. Now, why I think this could work is because if you put him with Lauri Markkanen in the front court, it's already loaded in itself. Plus the fact that you have Zach LaVine just going off like a beast. The Bulls could easily have one of their best teams since the Derrick Rose prime days of the early 2010s. Maybe that's an overstatement, but hey, look at them. They have that talent that even if they don't go far, they have enough talent to really compete with some of the powers of the East. Well, not some of the powers of the East. The Sixers and Nets are on a god tier level. We're talking like middle of the pack, like the Celtics, maybe the Knicks, maybe the Bucks even, which is surprising. But look at, the Bulls have those guys that people need to look out for. Maybe they have that best team since Jimmy Butler's Bulls, but it really depends on what happens in the long run, like how successful this Bulls team is going to be. Another underdog run is in the cards, but then again, it really depends on what happens in reality.
All right, don't disrespect the Bucks like that. The Bucks are in the top 3 teams in the East. There is a gap from 3 to 4, not from 2 to 3. The Bucks are in that level. They're on the same level as the Sixers and Knicks. All right. So I'm going to go with my favorite team, or my team that had the most favorite moves during the deadline. And I understand the Bulls, they added Vucevic. But, I think what the team I'm really going to go for is actually the Denver Nuggets. And that's because I think Aaron Gordon, maybe not in terms of, is he a better player than Vucevic? No, not at all. Obviously, Vucevic was an all-star. But is he a really good addition to a team that wants to take that next step? Yes. The Nuggets made the Eastern Conference Finals last year, lost to the Lakers in 5. Jamal Murray during playoffs becomes an absolute MVP candidate. And now Michael Porter this year is showing that he can be a really, really just special offensive weapon. By adding Aaron Gordon, not only do they add more athletic size, but they add another guy who can stretch the floor from big man spot That means Michael Porter can have more rain coming into the lane when he needs to, because he's done a really good job at kind of keeping that duality of sitting on the 3-point line and then running into the lane. And I think when you have that, it opens up the court for them. And I also think the Nuggets, unlike the Bulls, are in a position where they need to take that extra step to get to that final, super power tier. The Bulls, I think, need a couple more moves. Zach LaVine's great. Vucevic is great. They're nothing special in terms of when you're comparing them to teams like the top 3 in the East or like the top 5 in the West. I think that really just puts them on par with teams like the Knicks and the Hornets right now, as opposed to them being a few games back. But I think the team that really added to their chances, who really impacted their chances on making a deep run, were the Nuggets.
With all that said, Miami Heat did trade for Victor Oladipo, so don't forget about all that. And they also traded for Kings forward Nemanja Bjelica, who is a very nice stretch four. And now looking at a whole new market that has emerged in the NBA is the buyout market. Notable names like LaMarcus Aldridge signed with the Nets, Blake Griffin also signed with the Nets, Andre Drummond with the Lakers. Josh, it seems like the Nets and Lakers are on a crash course to the finals. Who do you have winning it all?
I mean, if the Nets just want to sign all of the guys with name brand values like Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, who haven't been good in 2 years, then go for it. I mean, it's awesome for them. They're going to get a free ring if that's how they want to do it. I actually don't think they will get a free ring because I think the Lakers are still a better team. I also think the Sixers are still matchup possible in the playoffs because I think Simmons, all defensive player, and Embiid, who is a mismatch for anyone on the Nets, is still a formidable task for the Nets to take on. I mean, I'd still predict that the Nets win that series, but I don't think it's as easy as people are saying. And I think the Lakers win the championship this year. I don't think it's really I don't think that's really going to be tested much, especially if AD and LeBron get back healthy and are like that through the playoffs.
Cole, who do you got? You got Nets or Lakers?
I like to see the Nets win their first title, but this could be interesting. If LeBron and AD are full health, remember they're both out, then this makes, if they do meet in the finals, you have to consider that they have to play the 3 rounds beforehand first. That's very key. And the West is incredibly loaded. Like, if it's the Lakers and the Nets in the finals, then it's going to be a 7-game on slaughter where it's going to go to overtime in game 7, if not most of the 7-game series. But again, I'm probably going to pick the Nets, but anything can happen, really. I mean, it's happened before, it can happen again.
I would just love for my favorite player, James Harden, to win a ring, even if it's on a team that's stacked. I mean, all the rings that I've watched, all the rings that I've enjoyed as being a Heat fan, I've been on these super teams, as some people like to say, with great players that I enjoy watching. And I just can't wait for the playoffs, and I can't wait for the Miami Heat with Jimmy Butler to upset those Brooklyn Nets.
I just want to say, I think as NBA fans, every single NBA fan, if you're not a fan of the Lakers or Nets, should be rooting for the Jazz and either the Knicks or the 76ers or the Bucks or any other team that aren't the Nets to make the finals.
Or the Miami Heat.
Or the Miami Heat, yes. I think that those should be the two teams those should be the teams people should be rooting for, because if the Nets and Lakers make it, it's just boring. Although the series would be amazing. Just, the rest of the entire playoffs will be boring.
Finally, moving on to the last week of March, I would be remiss not to talk about March Madness. We have had a tremendous storylines of Oral Roberts and Oregon State and the Pac-12. Cole, what's your biggest takeaway from the tournament so far?
I've had a lot to say. I've watched a lot of the games, but for time and stuff, I'm going to mention just one. It was evident yesterday in the first 2 games of the Elite Eight. No lead is safe. I'm not saying that the teams that had these incredible leads choked it. They kind of did, but they didn't lose. I'm talking about Houston and Baylor in general. Both of those teams had 10-plus point leads at one point in both the first and second halves, and they let teams like Arkansas, Oregon State rally back to be within less than 5 with less than 5 to go. But really, it's the whole story about no lead is safe. We've seen it before in the tournament. There have been, I could I'm not going to name them right here, but there's probably like a full handful, 2 hands full of leads of 10-plus that have been pretty much erased over the span of this tournament. And that's one thing you have to consider. Aside from the fact that regular season records don't matter at this point, aside from the fact that there's a bunch of different narratives come playoff time. It's really the fact that no lead is safe. I mean, you just can't count anyone out unless maybe you're Gonzaga, but that's a different story. But you really can't count anyone out. No one is safe. It's not over until it's over. And that's something that is very, very common to hear because it's happened before. It will happen again. But especially now, you can see it happening almost every day. In fact, there are 2 games tonight for the Elite Eight, and it could happen there too.
Yeah, so I have 2 things. One is kind of a joke. Look, if you ever want to win your bracket challenge, go a year without watching college basketball and you'll win it. Because if you know anything about college basketball, you will get every single round in the first round wrong. It's just how it works. But in all seriousness, my real takeaway here is that there is absolutely clear conference bias when it comes to the seeding of the NCAA tournament. I'm going to just bring you through 3 teams here that really show this. Number 1, I mean, look, they're the story of the tournament. They were incredible. Oregon State. Yes, I guess Oral Roberts may be another story of the tournament, but Oregon State, part of the Pac-12, a conference where all 5 teams or 4 of the 5 teams that were in got to the Sweet 16. The only team that lost was Colorado in the round of 32. But USC, Oregon, UCLA, and Oregon State all made it to the Sweet 16. 3 of those made it to the Elite Eight, and the only reason that all 4 of them didn't is because Oregon played USC in the Sweet 16. The Pac-12 is severely underseeded. And also, another team, as I mentioned, that I want to bring into this is Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago throughout the season was the number 1 defense in the NCAA in all stats in terms of opposing field goal percentage, opposing 3-point percentage, and points per game opposing. They were number 1, and they were an 8th seed. Illinois, as great as they were this season, I think should have made it further in the tournament because they shouldn't have had to see Loyola Chicago in the second round. It was absolutely ridiculous that Loyola Chicago was slept on like that. And I think when you combine the fact that the Pac-12 was clearly slept on, Loyola Chicago and those other mid-conference tiers were slept on, and then you talk about the Big East teams like Villanova and Creighton who went to the Sweet 16 and were only taken out because they had to play the number 1 seeded Gonzaga and the number 1 seeded Baylor. I think that there's clear conference bias when it comes to how the tournaments are seeded.
And yeah, there's definitely no argument made there. The seeding is definitely under scrutiny for this year, especially with the pandemic latent season. And for me, the best part of the tournament was the fact that we were able to have a tournament this year. Last year, we missed a tournament because of the pandemic, and I think it's really special. And I want to give a special thanks to everyone that sacrificed so much to allow us to enjoy the tournament this year, because it's really something that we're all waiting for, we all excited for, and it really gives us a sense of normalcy. With all that said, that is all for Storrs Nation. Thank you for enjoying the show, and I cannot wait for next week.